Today, I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself a powerful question. What would you do if someone tried to erase your identity in a single act of cruelty? This is not a story meant to shock you. It is a story meant to awaken you. It is the story of a woman who faced an acid attack, one of the most brutal forms of violence, and refused to let that moment define the end of her life. Instead, she chose to redefine its beginning. When the world expected her to disappear in shame, she stood up in courage. When pain tried to silence her, she found her voice. And that choice changed everything. She woke up in a hospital bed, her body burning, her future uncertain, and her reflection unrecognizable. The physical pain was unbearable, but the emotional wounds cut even deeper. Society often looks away from women like her, treating survival as if it were not enough. But here is the hook we must hold on to. Survival is only the first chapter. What she did next is what turned pain into power. Day by day, through surgeries, stares, whispers, and self-doubt, she made a decision to live loudly, proudly, and without apology. She learned that her scars were not signs of weakness, but proof that she had endured what was meant to destroy her. As a stories expert, I have seen one truth repeat itself again and again. Bravery is not born in comfort. This woman transformed her trauma into purpose. She spoke when silence felt safer. She stepped into public spaces when hiding felt easier. She became an advocate for acid attack survivors, demanding justice, stricter laws, and dignity for women who had been ignored for too long. Her courage reminded us that real beauty is not about a flawless face, but an unbreakable spirit. Every time she shared her story, she gave other survivors permission to believe again, to dream again, to rise again. Silence was the easier option, and everyone around her expected her to choose it. After the acid attack, the world quietly pushed her toward invisibility, as if disappearing would make the discomfort go away. But here is the moment that defines true bravery. She made a conscious decision not to vanish. Speaking as a brave women's stories expert, I can tell you this. Courage does not always arrive with confidence. Sometimes it arrives trembling, uncertain, and afraid, yet it still speaks. In those early days, her voice was weak, her heart heavy, and her faith shaken, but she understood one powerful truth. Silence would only protect the crime, not the survivor. That realization became her first act of resistance, and it changed the direction of her life. Every word she spoke felt like stepping into fire again. People stared, whispered, and judged, and the fear of rejection followed her everywhere. Yet she showed up at hospitals, at police stations, in courtrooms, and eventually on public platforms because she refused to let fear write her story. Here's the hook we often miss. Bravery is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to surrender to it. Each time she told her truth, she reclaimed a piece of herself that violence had tried to steal. Her voice became stronger not because the pain disappeared, but because purpose began to outweigh it. She learned that when one woman speaks honestly, she creates permission for countless others to breathe freely. What makes her choice even more powerful is that she spoke not for sympathy, but for change. She demanded accountability, justice, and dignity in a society that often blames victims for surviving. As an expert in stories of brave women, I have seen how rare this is, choosing confrontation over comfort, truth over quiet survival. She understood that silence might bring temporary peace, but her voice could bring lasting impact. With every conversation, interview, and testimony, she challenged harmful norms and shattered the idea that a woman's worth can be taken away by violence. And here is the most compelling part of her journey. Her courage became contagious. Other survivors saw themselves in her honesty and found the strength to speak. What began as one woman breaking her silence turned into a powerful ripple of voices demanding to be heard. This is how real change begins, not with perfection, but with one brave decision to speak when silence feels safer. When she first saw her scars, they felt heavier than the pain itself. They were permanent, visible, and unforgiving, and for a long time, they seemed to announce her trauma before she ever spoke a word. Many women in her position are taught to see scars as something to hide, something to be ashamed of, something that lowers their worth. but as a brave women's stories expert, I have witnessed a rare and powerful shift when a survivor chooses a different lens. She reached a moment of clarity where she understood that these marks were not symbols of defeat, they were evidence of survival. That realization did not come easily or quickly. It came through tears, doubt, and countless moments of self-confrontation. At first, strength looked nothing like confidence. It looked like stepping outside despite the stares, like holding her head up when her instinct was to look down, like choosing to meet her own reflection without flinching. Here is the hook many people overlook. Transformation begins not when the scars fade, but when the meaning attached to them changes. Slowly, she stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What does my survival make possible?" That shift turned her scars into a source of power. They became proof that she had endured unimaginable cruelty and still chose to live fully, visibly, and unapologetically. As her mindset changed, so did her presence. She stopped trying to explain herself and started owning her story. In conversations, in public spaces, and in moments of vulnerability, she allowed her scars to exist without apology. This was not defiance for attention, it was courage rooted in self-respect. Speaking as someone who studies brave women's journeys, I can say this with certainty: when a woman accepts herself completely, she takes back control that violence tried to steal. Her scars no longer spoke of pain alone, they spoke of resilience, dignity, and an unbreakable will. What made her transformation truly inspiring was how her strength reached beyond her own healing. Other survivors saw her confidence and realized they did not have to erase themselves to be accepted. Her scars became mirrors, reflecting hope back to those who had only known shame. In redefining her own strength, she quietly redefined strength for others, proving that real power is not found in perfection, but in the courage to stand fully as you are. From the moment she stepped back into society, she was confronted by a painful reality. The world often measures a woman's value by how closely she fits a narrow definition of beauty. After the acid attack, she no longer fit that definition, and people were quick to remind her of it through stares, silence, and uncomfortable sympathy. Yet, as a brave women's stories expert, I have learned that the most powerful revolutions do not always happen on streets or stages. Sometimes, they begin in how a woman chooses to show up in a judgmental world. Instead of shrinking herself to make others comfortable, she made a bold decision to exist fully and visibly, challenging standards that had never served women in the first place. There is a hook here that demands attention. Society did not just test her appearance, it tested her confidence, her dignity, and her right to belong. Every public space became a battlefield where she had to choose between hiding and standing tall. And she chose to stand. She refused to let broken standards decide her worth. In doing so, she exposed a truth many avoid, that beauty based only on appearance is fragile, temporary, and exclusionary. Her presence alone became a statement, one that said a woman does not lose her value when her face changes, and dignity is not something others get to grant or take away. As she continued to live openly, something remarkable happened. Conversations shifted. People were forced to confront their own discomfort, their own biases, and their own silence. Speaking from years of studying brave women's journeys, I can say this with confidence. When one woman challenges the rules, she gives others permission to question them too. She redefined beauty through her actions, through confidence that came from self-acceptance, through strength shaped by survival, and through authenticity that refused to be edited for approval. She became living proof that resilience is more compelling than perfection. Her courage did not rely on loud protests or dramatic speeches. It lived in everyday moments. It lived in the way she walked into rooms without apology, the way she met eyes instead of avoiding them, and the way she spoke of herself with respect. These choices may seem small, but they quietly dismantled harmful standards that have silenced women for generations. By simply being herself, she shifted the narrative from appearance to character, from judgment to humanity. In challenging society's standards, she did more than reclaim her own identity. She reshaped the way strength and beauty are understood, reminding us that a woman's worth is defined by her spirit, not her reflection. What began as a deeply personal fight for healing slowly evolved into a responsibility she never asked for but bravely accepted. After surviving the acid attack, she realized that her voice carried weight far beyond her own story. As a brave women's stories expert, I have seen how rare this transition is from survivor to advocate, from private pain to public purpose. She understood that while healing is deeply individual, silence allows injustice to repeat itself. That understanding became the spark that pushed her to speak not only for herself, but for countless women who were still trapped in fear, shame, or invisibility. At first, advocacy did not look heroic. It looked like answering messages from strangers at midnight, listening to stories that reopened her own wounds, and standing beside survivors who felt too broken to stand alone. Here is the hook that often goes unnoticed. Real leadership is born in empathy, not authority. She used her experience to guide others through hospital systems, legal processes, and emotional recovery, becoming a bridge between survivors and a world that often fails them. Her presence alone told other women, "You are not alone, and your life still matters." As her work expanded, so did her courage. She began challenging institutions, questioning weak laws, and demanding accountability from those in power. Speaking as someone who studies the journeys of brave women, I can say this with certainty. When a woman who has survived extreme violence demands justice, her words carry an undeniable force. She was no longer just sharing a story. She was reshaping conversations around acid attacks, shifting the focus from shame to responsibility, from victim blaming to systemic change. Each time she stood before officials, media, or communities, she turned her survival into a call for action. What made her advocacy truly transformative was its ripple effect. Survivors who once believed their lives were over began to see new possibilities through her example. Families learned to support instead of hide their daughters. Communities were forced to confront a violence they had long ignored. Her voice became a catalyst, proving that one brave woman can challenge deeply rooted injustice. By becoming a voice for other survivors, she did more than fight for change. She created hope where there was none, and showed the world that true power is found in lifting others as you rise. So let me leave you with this thought. Pain does not get the final word, purpose does. This woman's journey teaches us that even the darkest acts cannot extinguish a determined soul. When one woman turns her suffering into strength, she doesn't just heal herself, she lights the way for countless others. May her story remind us to stand against violence, to support survivors, and to believe in the unstoppable power of resilience. Because when a woman survives an acid attack and turns pain into power, she doesn't just change her life, she changes the world.